Okay, so I thought today we would go into the principle of aspects more specifically. So first of all, if we go back to the original metaphor of the planets being the actors and the signs being the costumes, houses being the set in which they're acting, then the aspects are the dialogue between the actors. So the aspects also will show up as the aspect lines here. And actually, let me just go and change this if I can to the other. This is the Huber style, which is probably, it's the one I like to use of the sort of freely available systems. I like to use it the most, but if you are starting out, it's nice to be able to see the houses more. Want to go and put it into the other, into the angle system so you can see the houses. Okay, so I'm going to extended chart selection and go Anglo. And then I'm also going to set it for the house system of Koch, which is my preferred house system. And a lot of astrologers I've really respected. They did their own testing. I did my own testing. Everybody came up with the same house system that they prefer. So interesting. So here we go.
Is it just because it's easier to interpret, or?
Well, the house system, see, for all the chart systems, the first house is always the same, exactly the same sign and degree. The seventh house is always exactly the same sign and degree. The let's just click on it. It puts it up in another window. The midheaven, which is up in the 10th house, midheaven starts the 10th house, always the same degree, and the 4th house cusp is always the same degree. But all the house systems put the houses in slightly different locations for numbers 11, 12, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9. And what that does is that when planets change houses, it changes the timing of when they're changing houses. Sometimes it changes which houses certain planets are found in the birth chart. And there's a lot of different predictive systems that shift around as well. And all of these are just seem to be more accurate with this particular house system, as far as what I've been able to test out, as far as what Dane Rudyard tested out, as far as what the Hubers tested out. And those were two astrologers, or the Hubers is a couple that whose work I respect. So we all use Koch.
Yeah.
So that's what I tend to pass on. Placidus is the default setting, the default house system that is generally tended to be used. And that's what I originally learned on, but it is, as I went through what I went through with all kinds of different astrological, whether it's determining what house a planet is in for people, or looking at when planets change houses, I just found this one is just bang on all the time. So that's why I use it.
Okay.
So that's, but again, the Anglo would have set it up for Placidus, so that's why I go and set it for Koch. And nobody knows how to pronounce it, but I'm assuming because that's how I would say German. It's based on the guy's last name.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a lot of chart systems will draw the aspect lines inside, which is helpful. And the first aspect that is important to know about is shown as this sort of reddy or orangey blob, because it's a conjunction, and it means that those planets are in pretty much the same location.
Okay.
So you have a few conjunctions here. You have, here it's kind of showing that Mercury and the moon are conjunct. You might consider that Mercury and Uranus are also conjunct, although that's getting kind of wide. Moon and Uranus are conjunct, and Uranus and the sun are conjunct. And maybe even the moon and the sun are conjunct. Now, there's the principle of orbs when it comes to aspects, because when we're dealing with aspects, we're dealing with our geometry. So the circle is always 360 degrees in geometry. And a conjunction means that a planet is ideally in exactly the same degree, but that almost never happens because they're always moving around. So the closest conjunction we have in your chart right now is the conjunction between the moon and Uranus. So moon in 29 degrees Scorpio, 20 minutes. Uranus is at 0 degrees Sagittarius, 36 minutes. Now, when we get to the 29th degree, the next degree is 0 degrees of the next sign. So 0 degrees Sagittarius is actually 30 degrees Scorpio, but it is in the sign of Sagittarius, if that makes any sense. So 29:59 Scorpio, the next thing it turns into is 0, 0 Sagittarius.
Where did you get 59?
Oh, because the minutes of a degree are the same as the minutes in an hour. There's 60 minutes in a degree, and there's 60 seconds in a minute. So they're just ways to keep dividing it up into smaller and smaller pieces.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. So there's 30 degrees in a sign, there's 60 minutes in a degree, and 60 seconds in a minute. Okay, so the orb between this moon and Uranus conjunction is basically 1 degree, 16 minutes. And the way you work that out is from 29 to 0 is 1 degree. And then if you take 20 off of 36, you get 16 extra minutes. So if we add 60 to 20 minutes, we're going to come up with 0 degrees Sagittarius 20. That's a whole degree. And then we have the extra 16 minutes. So that's a pretty close orb. Now, a lot of people, you know, I tend to like it. The Magi Society, it's the only orb that you use with degrees, with you know, with the longitudes, which is what we're studying right now, is the aspects in the longitudes. They use 3 degrees. So 3 degrees is a nice rule of thumb. There are larger orbs, and most astrologers use a larger orb, and I would use, hard to explain. For some things in my system of astrology, the 3 degree orb is always used. And for other aspects, a wider orb is used. And each system, the Anglo system is going to use its own rule of setting up orbs. The Huber system has a very intricate orb system. So, and I was taught an orb system that certain planets that are more powerful, like the sun, will have a wider orb. So the sun can conjunct Mercury quite easily with that system, even though that's 8 degrees apart, more than 8 degrees, 3 minutes, actually, between Mercury and the sun. In the original system I was taught, you would definitely have a Mercury-Sun conjunction. But if that were a planet like Neptune in the same degree as your sun, you would not have a Mercury-Sun conjunction. So this is all kind of complicated. For now, let's just generally, if you're going to try to calculate it yourself, just generally use a 3 degree orb and use the aspect lines that show up in whatever house system you're using, whether you're going to use Anglo or you're going to use Huber. That gives you lots of room to play.
When you say use a 3 degree orb, can you say that to me one more time, what you mean by that?
Well, a 3 degree orb means that in order for there to be an aspect, the planets, for a conjunction, the planets have to be 3 degrees apart or less.
Apart or less, okay.
As a general rule. So here we have Uranus and the sun. That's 0 to 3 is 3 degrees. Now up here, 36 to 50 means it's a little more than 3 degrees.
And I'm wondering if we could even make like a tip sheet for the listeners about the 60 degree or 60, yeah, like the 60 minute, the 30 degrees in a sign. I'm wondering if we can create some sort of tip sheet that can complement the teaching today, because that would be helpful too.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Okay, so we definitely have 3 degree orb here with Moon and Uranus, no question. No astrologer would ever question that you have a Moon-Uranus conjunction. Now here, Mercury to Moon, and now because there's the colors here, is telling me that the Anglo system does say that you have a Moon-Mercury conjunction. I would personally say you have a Moon-Mercury conjunction, even though it's more than 3 degrees. It's pretty close. We basically want to say it's in the general area of being in the same place. That's a conjunction.
Yeah. Boy, but isn't the moon and... No, I see what you mean.
So even though Mercury's in your 3rd house and the
Yeah.
Moon's in your 4th house, they're still so close together.
But that's Moon and Jupiter, right? The other one, the 0 degree one. I'm still learning the.
Yeah, no, yes, you're still learning to recognize that. That's Uranus.
That's Uranus.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's the spaceship Enterprise. Remember?
Yes, my spaceship. Okay.
And
But they're further away,
Uranus is all
so
science fiction anyway. Uranus is the planet of science fiction, so it's perfect.
yeah. Okay, I get it. It's the planets that are the hardest for me for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we're going to say that when planets are conjunct, they're merged. They're working together.
Okay.
So if you want to look at what Moon and Mercury mean, what would you say about your Moon and your Mercury being merged when you think about yourself?
Do I?
You can look
Should
at
I go back to my
your
sheet?
sheets.
Yeah. Okay. Moon and Mercury. Okay. So, okay, let me just review this. The moon is like my emotional nature, my habits, my childhood feelings, my past life patterns, and Mercury is my mind, my thoughts, my communication style.
Yes. Now, the other thing is that when you look at these two and compare them to each other, the Mercury is the left brain and Moon is the right brain.
Yeah, they seem very.
This is the aspect I was talking to you about before in one of our sessions about indicating you'd make a good astrologer.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is that astrologers have a good right brain, left brain interface.
Mm-hmm.
Astrology is a science and an art. Astrology uses all this very logical systems and very clear-cut ideas that the left brain can grab a hold of. But it's also opens out into a world of infinite archetypes that are very feeling oriented, that have to be really comprehended from the basis of the intuition and the emotions. And so whenever a person has a Moon Mercury conjunction, it's like you automatically do that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You link your right and left brain to one another quite easily.
Mm. Yeah, the moon, I feel like it's my emotional nature, and Mercury's a little bit more my mind and my thoughts. Yeah,
That's right. But whenever you're having an emotion, your mind is making commentary.
right. Yes.
And your emotions also enter into your thoughts. But what's interesting is I've never seen a Moon Mercury conjunction where a person's Mercury gets hurt by the moon's presence. In other words, your emotions don't damage your ability to think logically. Now they could if you had an aspect between Moon and Mercury that was in conflict, a conflict-oriented aspect.
What does that mean if it's in conflict-oriented aspect?
Well, it means that those two planets are having an argument.
Mm-hmm.
So let's switch over for a minute, even though we haven't analyzed all of your conjunctions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's switch to squares.
Okay.
Now, a square is an aspect that's 1/4 of the chart away from the two planets are exactly 1/4 of the chart away. So let me see which is your closest square here. Okay. Yeah, your closest square is really your Venus-Saturn square.
Mm-hmm.
Now, squares are always unless they're set up so that something's right at the end of a sign and another one's at the beginning of a sign. Generally speaking, they are always in two signs that are of the same mode, but a very different element. So Saturn is in Libra, and what is the element and mode of Libra?
The element and mode of Libra?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You don't remember? Okay. Well, it's nice when they have the colors for the signs because
Oh, yeah.
and
You mean the sign that's in there?
hmm?
Are you asking me what the sign is in between there, or what?
No, I'm asking you what element and mode of Libra is, and now I'm telling you that with Anglo we've got a kind of orangey color for
Okay.
air. I wish they used a more yellowy color because then
Those are
it's
the
harder to tell the
scales.
difference between the fire signs, which are red, and the air signs, which are kind of orange in Anglo.
And those are the scales, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's the scales. So this is an air. All the orange ones are air,
Okay. See that.
and and Libras. Remember that it's air is very social,
Hmm.
and Libra is very socially goal oriented. So what mode is goal oriented? You're tired today. We're both tired. It's cardinal. We have cardinal air.
Cardinal air. Okay. I know I have to go back to the very beginning. You just,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this is why it's so important to keep those basics.
Yeah.
It's like learning your musical scales or
Yeah.
learning your ABCs. We ought to always have it. As you develop, this is one of the things we want to get into your memory. You want to get
Right.
the order of the zodiac automatically in your memory. You want to have elements and modes automatically in your memory because they're always key codes that explain things.
Uh-huh.
We have a cardinal air sign here. Now Venus over here. What sign is Venus in?
Um, that is, that one's a weird one.
Yes, it is a weird one.
Um, what sign would that be? I'm like going through. I know all this. This is the one that I always. Um, it it looks weird though.
Yeah, sometimes that particular sign, they draw it a little differently all the time. There's different
Yeah,
ways of drawing it. So that one's Capricorn.
that's
So,
Capricorn.
yeah, that's
Okay.
the goat's horn curling around here.
Okay.
But it's a, it's a different stylized way of portraying Capricorn. So it almost sits there looking quite a bit like Taurus with a little edge over here.
Yeah, that's why. But yeah, I know Taurus is a little bit more clear on
Yeah, yeah,
the the ram kind of. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
or the
For
horns.
me, it's very easy for me to pick up the fact that it's Capricorn, partly because I have all the zodiac signs, the order of the zodiac is encoded in me. And I know immediately, well, this is Sagittarius, this is Aquarius, and Capricorn's in between.
Right.
So, boom, I have it instantly, pretty much virtually instantly within milliseconds. Even if it's a weird way to draw Capricorn, I can immediately recognize it's Capricorn. Just like
Okay.
just like if somebody has sloppy handwriting because you know your letters so well, you can
Yeah.
figure out that's an F, even though their F is, their F is like the Starship Enterprise. They have a weird F.
Yeah.
So Capricorn, what element is Capricorn?
Capricorn is. Let me think about this. Um, Capricorn's the hardest one. I
So
think
he's the mountain goat. What element do you think that might be if you just think about the symbol of the mountain goat?
Earth.
Earth, exactly. And when you think about a symbol of a mountain goat, what do you think might be the mode?
Um,
Mountain goat is climbing.
um,
So climbing isn't particularly adaptable, and climbing isn't staying in one place. So what
card
else could it be?
cardinal.
Yeah, exactly. So we're cardinal. Now the other thing about squares is they're always in signs that are different genders, opposite genders. So air and fire are the male genders, and
Mhm.
earth and water are the female genders. So your Saturn is in a goal-oriented sign that is a male gender and air. Your Venus is in a goal-oriented sign that is a female gender and earth. So if you understand how these elements and modes are working, they're both goal-oriented, but they're going about it in completely different ways.
Hmm.
So Saturn is goal-oriented in a social, masculine way.
Mhm.
This is goal-oriented in a physical, practical, feminine way.
Hmm.
So we're immediately there's immediately a conflict. Or sometimes, especially the Hubers, look at a square as being something that generates energy, because you're rubbing two sticks together, so it can create a lot of drive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing about aspects is that every aspect has a planetary ruler. So if we go back to conjunctions, the planetary ruler of any conjunction is Mercury. That explains why a Mercury moon conjunction, Mercury is still doing really well when it's in a because it's a Mercury aspect. The planets are in communication with one another. A square is a Mars aspect. So the line, that's the colored line that's used in pretty much every system that colors the lines, is red, which is Mars. It's Martian. So we have a drive, but we have conflict. So if your Venus and your Saturn are having a conversation and they're yelling at each other because they're in conflict, what might this conflict be?
So it's goal orientation, right?
Yes. So Saturn has a goal that is conflicting with Venus's goal.
Mm-hmm. Is it the practicality versus the more, how do you say?
Could be intellectual. Air is intellectual and social.
Yeah.
And you also want to look at the basic motivations of those planets. So if we go back to your Moon Mercury conjunction, Moon and Mercury are both absorb information. They're both perceiving. They're united together in perceiving. So you've got an excellent aspect because your right brain and your left brain are working together to perceive. That's a nice union. If we have a conflict between Venus and Saturn, what are the basic drives, or what are the basic qualities of these two actors outside of the costumes they're wearing right now? What do Venus and Saturn do in our chart?
Like Saturn's your fears, right?
Yes.
So versus Mercury is kind of like your thoughts.
Yeah, but we're wanting Venus.
Oh, we're wanting Venus.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, because the square is Venus and
Saturn
squaring each other.
Like, is it conflicting with who I am, like based on my fears? Is that kind of where it's going?
Well, Venus is who you want to be, and Venus is who I want to be. Venus is how I love, what kind of love I want, what I want from love. And Saturn's scared.
Yeah.
Now,
the fear of relationships failing.
Yeah. So you've got the fear that relationships failing is fighting with Venus. And what does Venus want? Venus is saying, yeah, but I just want
love.
I just want love. And what kind of love does Venus in Capricorn want?
Long-standing love.
Yes. Because it's Earth. It's going to be secure.
Secure, yeah. Wow, you're really challenging me to interpret this today.
Yeah, well, aspects to tell a lot about interpretation. So do houses. When you put planets in their signs and in their houses, there's a lot of interpretation there. But as soon as we have planets interacting, there's a lot of interpretation that goes on.
What else would it interpret?
Well, Venus in an Earth sign is quite physical. It's sensual. Physical. You want a real relationship. You want it to be here in the physical world and go somewhere, because in a cardinal sign, we want to accomplish something. So I want physical affection. I want physical contact. I want a sensual relationship, and I want it to be secure. And Saturn's saying, yeah, but relationships are going to fail. I'm really scared relationships are going to fail. So
that's where the conflict comes in.
Yeah, it is where conflict.
What I want versus kind of what my subconscious is saying, maybe what's happened in past.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Because one thing esoterically about Saturn is it's the fears that are essentially stored at the base of our spine, where whenever we're really scared, you can really feel that part of us activate.
Mhm.
Those fears are there because the same kind of situation happened over and over and over again in past lives. So Saturn is also very practical. Saturn says, I'm trying to take care of you. You know, relationships are going to fail. So we have to be intellectual about this, and we have to be fair about this. We have to make sure everything's going to be okay. I just don't know if this is going to work. And Venus is going, but it has to work because this is what I need. But another thing specifically interesting about this square is that Saturn is sitting in Libra. Now, what sign rules Libra? Or sorry, what planet rules the sign Libra?
Um, what planet rules the sign Libra? Um, hmm.
Well, Libra is about relationships and beauty, harmony. What planet probably rules that sign?
What planet will be? I don't know. To tie it in with my planets now.
I've given you printouts about that too, I think.
Yeah, I think I need to tie it in and study that part.
Yes, yes, because that's so the planet that rules the sign Libra is Venus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what planet do you think rules the sign Capricorn? This goal-oriented mountain goat up there on the scary hills climbing.
It would have to be a strong one.
Yeah.
Mercury?
Nope. The planet that rules Capricorn is Saturn.
Saturn. Okay.
So now we have a Saturn-Venus square here.
Big one.
A Saturn-Venus square here, but
Yeah.
Venus rules Saturn and Saturn rules Venus.
Yeah.
And that's good because that's known as a mutual reception. When you have planets that are in each other's signs, they're ruled by each other, they're actually in better harmony with each other. So even though they're fighting, they keep doing peace talks all the time
Is
in
this
your chart.
when you're saying this is in conflict, is this somehow predicting, like for someone like me, that like I would have a lot of failed relationships, or is that speaking to like the fact that I'm supposed to overcome that? Like, what does that really mean?
It really speaks to both.
That I'm gonna have like quite a bit of relationships as I'm working through,
Yeah,
making it the most, like getting ready for that relationship.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's why the conflict is there, because it's meant to be there to
Yeah.
make me stronger for that piece. Is that kind of,
Yes. Yeah, it
yeah,
really highlights all of
myself
this.
if I was talking to someone, just so I could, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it forces you to face all these issues. You can't shelve them; they're all constantly there, and that's where the Hubers are right about a square or any of their stress aspects. That most astrology calls it a stressful aspect or a quote unquote bad aspect. It generates constant energy because it won't let you alone. If people don't have enough squares or they don't have any squares in their chart, they sit on their butt all day and go whoa, because they've
Well,
got nothing
people
driving.
not have a lot of squares sometimes.
Sorry, what?
People not have a lot of squares
Yeah,
sometimes.
sometimes. Well, it doesn't happen very often, but there are some charts that have no squares. I only have one square.
Really?
So, that's, but I am pretty driven. My one square definitely drives me.
And how many do I have?
However,
Where do you see?
I really require a lot of peace. I
Yeah.
don't like a lot. I'm not a conflict oriented person.
Mhm. Can you tell how many scores I have here? I have 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Is there people that have a lot more than that? Is
Oh,
that a lot?
yeah. Yes, there are people who have a lot more. Now, if
And
we
so
just
do they naturally struggle a little bit more, or that it's meant to like,
they're scrappier. They're scrappier, and it depends on if someone has what's called a T square, which is when you have a perfect square. Your chart would show a perfect red square in here, and also a perfect red cross, because if you have a T-square, you have 4 squares and 2 oppositions.
Mm-hmm.
That tends to create so much stress in a person's life from an early age that many of them become quite humble, and they're not so aggressive, because they're kind of cowed by what's been going on, but they become very giving people, a lot of them. Everybody's unique in how they respond to these things, because there's the old saying in astrology, the stars impel, they do not compel, which means we're not controlled by this, but we choose a certain riddles. Each chart has its riddles, and they're selected by the soul. And then how we respond to those riddles is our own individual decision. So not everybody's going to respond to them the same, but a majority of people who have a big giant T-square tend to be humble. People who have a lot of squares in their chart in general, if it's not in T-square, they're pretty driven, they're kind of scrappy. When
you say riddle, you mean like we're setting out tests for ourselves in order to kind of get like along the way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have that particular square we looked at.
And what's the difference between the green, blue, and red again? Red is Mars, you said?
Red lines, well, a red line is usually a square or an opposition. You don't have any oppositions in your chart, so I'll have to look at another chart to find some oppositions. But yeah, in general, the red lines are stress lines. The orange lines, the orange are conjunctions, and that's in Angle and Huber anyway. I don't know. A lot of other ones don't put colors in their lines at all. They just have, and they usually have too many lines because they're using all kinds of minor aspects and using big orbs. So you just have a ball of tangled string in the middle, and you can't really do much with it. Even to try and track down, is there an aspect here? It's hard to see. And some chart systems don't put any lines in the middle at all, because the astrologer does it all by eye, and it's good to develop that ability to do it by eye. That's what I started doing. So I'll look at it by eye a lot of times before I even look at the stuff in the middle, the lines in the middle. So basically, orange is conjunctions, red is stress or energy aspects, blue is harmony, beautiful flow. And blue is either a trine or a sextile, which you have here. And green is halfway between stress and harmony. So green is, we're really not sure what's going on here, but it's kind of intriguing. So we're going to get to green in a little while, but the really fundamental basic aspects are the conjunction, the sextile, which is a smaller harmony, the square, which is this, these guys has the nature of Mars. These guys are fighting each other. The trine, which is a beautiful flowing harmony. You have a grand trine, which is a wonderful blessing. And luckily you have all these squares in there that keeps your grand trine from making you spoiled, to be honest, because a lot of people, just like a lot of people with a grand cross, become very sweet and humble. A lot of people with a grand trine, which you have, can become spoiled brats. They're used to having everything given to them. But
is the trine show in a particular area? Is it just all over my life? Like, is that like when you see a trine for someone?
It does show it does show in a specific area. If it's not being moderated by some kind of the more stressful aspects, which give us more sense of responsibility and perspective. You can see your squares are completely linked into the trine here. This is almost like a giant triangle on a spring. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But then there's a green line right through it. Does that mean anything?
Yeah.
That's you said it's a halfway between the stress and the harmony. So
that particular line is a quincunx, which is 150 degrees. So an opposition is when two planets are exactly opposite to each other in the chart. And then if we move over one sign, if we have a mathematical alignment, so here is Saturn again at 18 Libra, and Chiron at 19 Taurus, It's like about a degree away. It's pretty much exactly a degree away. That's the quincunx, 150 degrees. Now, quincunx has the nature of Neptune.
Quincunx. How do you spell that?
Q-U-I-N
Mm-hmm.
C-U-N-X, quincunx.
Okay.
And it has the nature of Neptune, which for a long time people saw Neptune as idealistic but confused, dreaming. Quincunx is a very spiritualizing aspect. And a quincunx also, as far as the Magi Society is concerned, and I like their perspective on certain things, a lot of things, including this one, that a quincunx is actually a beneficial aspect, unless a really stressful planet is involved like Saturn. But Chiron makes a beneficial aspect to Saturn, and Saturn makes a not so beneficial aspect to Chiron, according to the Magi Society's teaching.
What does that really mean?
Well, it means that Chiron is the planet of trust, so you're capable of trusting in a way that could help heal your fears. But because the planet of fear is quincunx in Chiron, your fears attack your relationships. So Saturn is not being very nice to either Venus or Chiron. However, because Venus and Chiron are trining each other, again, you've got a real nice added edge to help to resolve that issue, even this issue. So these three planets are all in a specific alignment where we have a square with Saturn and Venus, quincunx with Saturn and Chiron, and a trine with Chiron and Venus. And the trine being divine grace, it's going to help sort this whole thing out positively ultimately. So that aspect is telling the same story as your Jupiter in Libra, that you've got a happy ending. So if we go to trines, because you have the beautiful grand trine here, the trine has the nature of Jupiter, which is divine grace. There's a beautiful flow. Trines always happen between planets that are in the same element. So they're going to automatically understand each other. Now, Venus is our ability to trust, and it's our spiritually oriented relationships, our true soul brothers and sisters and soulmates. So if you have Venus flowing towards Chiron, what does that say about you?
And Chiron is the trusting, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So is it pushing me to learn to trust and bring in those relationships that I can trust?
I think it shows that you innately do trust. I mean, if you look at this whole aspect, it's like, here's this beautiful flow. I am soulmate potential. I am soulmate oriented. I trust the people I really love. I trust in love. So along comes this lovely flow, and then Saturn comes into the game and stomps it.
Yeah.
Like, hold on here. How dare you trust in that? It's going to fail.
So it's like my nature is to trust, and then Saturn brings that back. Okay, it's making more sense now.
Yeah, so this loop happens where the opening happens and then the shutdown happens, and goes round and round. But over time, especially because you've got the mutual reception between Venus and Saturn, they're secretly buddies who are fighting right now. They rule each other. So Venus lies back and Saturn catches her, and Saturn lies back. And when he finally learns to say the fears are all an illusion, then Venus catches him.
That's interesting.
And Chiron says, I knew it all along. It was going to be fine.
We haven't talked too much about Chiron.
No.
What did you say about Chiron? It's trust.
Chiron is the key to your heart, the key to your soul. It's about soul-based relationships. It's the most important planet when you look at it in terms of where your Chiron is in terms of other people's charts. It's the most important planet when we compare charts to each other. So for instance, my Saturn is at 17 Capricorn. which is in a trine with your Chiron.
Mm-hmm.
And Saturn, although it's the fears that we are born with, as we learn to face our fears, we develop wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So my Saturn trining your Chiron means you trust my wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And it also means my wisdom guides your ability to fulfill soulmates, guides your ability to love. So it's one of the most powerful positive aspects a teacher and a student can have, is a positive Saturn Chiron aspect.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And your Chiron trusts my Saturn. Wow, you've overcome so many of your fears. Oh, please show me how.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and of course I want to, I have a natural love for you that wants to show you how.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's a good one for mentors. And it can even work out nicely in relationships, intimate relationships. But an ideal one, obviously, between charts is between Venus and Chiron. And then Neptune is also a very romantic planet. So if you find someone whose Neptune makes a positive aspect to both your Chiron and your Venus, that would be completely magical relationship.
How would that show up? Like, where would Neptune be? Like, it would be like on their chart, it would be where.
Well, if it was Neptune, it would be somebody there's some kind of age gap.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they'd be old, they'd be quite a bit older or younger than you to get that ideal situation with Venus and Chiron and Neptune. However,
how do you know that though?
Well, because Neptune is a generational planet, and it moves pretty slowly. So it has to be, every 10 years or so, it changes signs. So in order for there to be a harmonious aspect, your Neptune right now, it's about a sign away from your Venus. So you'd need to take it back another sign. We'd have to take it back to Neptune and Scorpio. So that's somebody 10 years older than you, or maybe a bit more than 10 years older than you would have the Neptune in Scorpio. So you'd have the sextile. That would give you an opposition with Chiron, but it would still be, because of the harmony with Venus, it would be kind of nice.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. But that's not the only good aspect you could have. There's plenty of other ways to have good aspects. So
where the orange is conjuncting with the all those green lines? It's like there's a bunch of green right between the that there. What does that mean? It looks like there's a ton of lines like overlapping. Like when you see like a thick line like that, what does that mean?
That's because you have two conjunctions here that are about a sign apart. Mm-hmm. And when planets are in the same degree, but the next sign over, so here we have Jupiter 29, Libra 49, Moon 29, Scorpio 20. That's called a semi-sextile. Mm-hmm. It's exactly 30 degrees apart. It's a pretty minor aspect in a person's birth chart, although it always depends on what the planets are.
Okay.
But basically, you have a Jupiter, Moon, semi-sextile. So Jupiter's whispering to your Moon, everything's going to be okay, but it's whispering. It's a minor aspect.
Okay, I see what you mean. So it's not as strong.
Right. Now, there are some situations where sextiles are strong, either in a person's chart and or between two people's charts, but that's more detailed. We'll get into that at another point in time. But the quincunx and the semi-sextile, the two green lines. And the square and the opposition are the two red lines, and blue lines are sextile and trine. So trines are always in the same element. We have this grand trine between Venus, Mars, Chiron, and it's all in earth signs. Venus in the earth sign of Capricorn, Mars in the earth sign of Virgo, and Chiron in the earth sign of Taurus. A grand trine means we've covered all the bases in the earth signs. Mm-hmm. So there's such a sense of fulfillment and completion and bounty with the grand trine. Mm-hmm. And I was also mentioning before that you don't separate sex and love. So Venus is a romantic planet, but a sexual planet. Mars is a sexual planet. And Chiron is the planet of love and deep trust. So it would have these three in a grand trine. This is a Venus-Mars trine is a sexual aspect.
Isn't that their ultimate relationship?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's too bad you can't have a relationship with yourself. It would be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. We're eventually going to look at charts like like even yours and mine, or like
Yeah.
how like
Yeah,
to
compatibility for sure.
connect. Yeah, because I think that's the piece too.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
And when you see in the 11th house, there's that little blue line, like that's just sticking out. What does that mean again? That little blue, yeah, there.
There.
What is that little?
Well, that means that this particular part of your chart's not aspecting anything.
Okay. So
So
it just sticks out a little.
yeah, because if you notice all the other planets, something sticks out a little, and then it links through a conjunction or the sextile or the semi-sextile or the square, the trine. Here, this isn't linking with anything.
Okay.
That's your moon's node, which is not exactly a planet. It's a point that is basically formed by the moon as it moves back and forth over the ecliptic, which is essentially the equator in outer space. So the moon goes up and down around the Earth, and the moon's node is formed every time the moon passes a certain point. And it's a mathematical karmic point that we'll discuss later. So your node has no aspects.
So because I'm in my 5th house right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I have an aspect directly linked into, like, does it matter that one of the aspects is directly linked to the 5th
Yes.
house there?
Yes. Yes.
And then I have Venus there too.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Is that telling me anything? I
Well,
guess
it's Saturn.
I'm trying
Saturn's
to put it together because I'm reading it. I'm
yeah.
in my 5th house right now. So
Sure. And when you say you're in your 5th house right now, you mean Saturn is transiting your 5th house. And Saturn is generally almost always the most important transiting planet that says what time it is in your life. So yeah, when Saturn is on your Venus right now. So it is deeply working on restructuring, optimizing, perfecting this part of your chart.
for love.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that is important for sure. And it's no accident really that you're learning all this stuff about your chart, about the relationship, and that we kind of focus on it today.
Yeah, because I'm meant to master it, to essentially, if we
Yes,
say it like
yes.
that. Yeah.
Yep, yep,
Or overcome my fears. And the more I know about myself, the more it helps me from a soul development perspective.
exactly. Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Now sextiles are always they're 60 degrees apart. They're when planets are 2 signs apart. So we have Neptune 23 degrees 49 Sagittarius and Pluto 25 degrees 46 in Libra. So that's 2 degrees apart. And they're always in the same gendered signs. So Libra is a male sign, Sagittarius is a male sign, but they are not the same element. And they are elements that are very beneficial to each other. So if you think about the element of air, air feeds fire.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing, if you want to put a candle out, you snuff it, which means it's not getting any air.
Mm-hmm.
Air and fire are beneficial. A sextile between water and earth is beneficial as well, because you have to put water on the earth for it to be fertile. Now, Neptune and Pluto are in sextile for a vast number of people born, I think, from the 1940s into just about now. The Neptune-Pluto sextile is finally ending.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got about a 70-year phase where everyone has this aspect, because Pluto and Neptune are moving more or less at the same speed, not quite. That's why the eventual aspect is eventually fading out.
Mm-hmm.
But it means an entire long-standing generation that works constructively, or has the capacity to work constructively with archetypes and with the subconscious mind. And when you think about what's been going on in the last several decades in terms of what's becoming public knowledge and public understanding about spirituality, psychology, you can see that we are a generation that works constructively with our subconscious mind. But
Mm-hmm.
what's most interesting is that little springy device of your trine. It's supported by this Neptune Pluto sextile.
Oh,
And
yeah.
all your stresses are forging energy to catapult that trine forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really interesting.
So is there ever, you know how you said air feeds fire for that piece?
Yep.
Is there any place where it wouldn't be constructive? It would be something that wouldn't be helpful, or is it always something that kind of
A sextile has the nature of Venus,
mm,
and the traditional saying about sextiles is the two planets are friends.
mm-hmm.
It's a gentle Venus in traditional astrology, Jupiter is called the greater benefic, and Venus is called the lesser benefic. So it means
Benefic?
Venus, hmm?
Benefic?
Yeah, benefic. In other words, bestower of blessings.
Okay.
So Jupiter gives big giant goodies, and Venus gives nice little goodies. You know, Venus comes over and she gives you a nice box of chocolates. Jupiter comes over and he carries a big giant garbage bag full of $100 bills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jupiter does relate to abundance, financial abundance, but Jupiter is just about everything being beneficial. So this is why the grand trine is so lovely. And Venus sits there and quietly says, you know, you always got this going for you. You can work really constructively with your subconscious mind. We're going to work out these stresses. We're going to work out these conflicts. And we're going to send this trine, this grand trine, out there and to the moon.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is very nice.
So it's starting to come together a little bit. I think maybe what I'll do too is like get a whiteboard almost and create like a bunch of legends and connect all
Yes.
of things just so it's kind of like, and maybe there's a spot on my wall that I could have it during a lesson to kind
Yes.
of continuously reference it back.
Yeah,
Because we
that's a good idea.
in the first little bit, and a whiteboard I could create like even 4 sectors with, you know, pulling everything together.
Yes, yes.
But I was just trying to think how I because now we're connecting everything, but it's yeah. And then there's the calculations, I think, which is going to be a little bit the hardest part for me, understanding the degrees. So if you have any suggestions
Yes.
for a tip sheet for everyone, I think that will help too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.